Hi, a very good morning. Today we're going to focus on Asian parliamentary style. All right. The reason why I'm recording this session is just to give you a little bit of time for you to go through the concepts by yourself. All right. So that when I'm going to release the motion later today, you have ample of time to decide with your teammates and discuss what is the strategy and what are the approaches you're going to use tackling the motion itself. All right, just give me a second. I'm about to share my screen for the presentation. All right, here we go. So, Asian parliamentary style is slightly different compared to the Australasian style that you have done previously. The concept is almost the same. We're going to have three debaters in one team for the government or the proposition team, and we have three members in the negative team, or we would say the opposite team, right? So the only difference or distinctive feature that differentiate Asian parliamentary and Australasian is that Australasian is meant for novice debaters, like what I've mentioned way much earlier, and on the other hand, Asian parliamentary is for debaters who are trying to explore their skills as well as trying to establish themselves as a distinguished speaker. So Asian parliamentary style will usually encompass POI or points of information, because remember, you want to establish yourself in a debate, so which means that you need to present valid arguments, and at the same time these arguments need to be validated by the members of the debate team to make sure it is something that's feasible or it's irrelevant to the motion itself. So you're going to have two teams in Asian parliamentary style of debate. So the advanced form of debating pattern will be British parliamentary style. We don't cover that in this paper unless you're planning to, extend yourself as a debater for a long-term run. You can probably sign up under the club, and you will be exposed to the format of British parliamentary style of debate. So speaking of teams, all right, you have two teams. You have the affirmative team, the government team, the opposition team, who's the negative team, who's going to oppose the motion, right, and who's going to refute the motion itself. And each of these side will have three members. Starting off from the prime minister, deputy prime minister, whip of the government, as well as leader of opposition, deputy leader of opposition, and whip of the government. So, the roles are almost the same as a prime minister. It's very important for you to open the debate, clarify the debate itself. You need to understand certain motions are pretty direct. So, there's not much of definition needed, as well as not much of clarification needed. For example, the House will the House will legalize death penalty. Probably, right? So when we talk about death penalty, we all know it's capital punishment. But again, you still want to open up the debate and provide us a little bit of context. Like, you want to legalize death penalty for what reason, right? And where do you want to do it? Is this in Malaysia? You want to abolish death penalty? Is it in Malaysia, or you want to abolish death penalty for probably convicts who have completed enough of sentencing? That equates to the crime done, right? So that is how you are supposed to open the debate. That means you're supposed to provide a little bit of clarification that will give us a better understanding of what the debate is all about. And at the same time, it is also important, being a prime minister, that you are supposed to address some of the issues and challenges in the motion itself. You need to understand that every motion that we put forward, there are some challenges, there are some issues that you need to tackle as a prime minister. For example, the gap, right? So you're trying to address who are the stakeholders in this motion. So what is the issue and what is the challenge, and what are you trying to prove at the end of the day? The burden of proof. Okay, so defining the motion is necessary. So you don't have to provide a dictionary kind of definition. A definition is just enough for us to understand what are you trying to talk about and what is the concept in your debate. For example, death penalty is capital punishment. That means the form of executing a criminal. Yeah, all right. An advanced argument. So as a prime minister, I think it is sufficient for you to come up with just one argument. Okay, and deputy prime minister, you are supposed to remember, once the prime minister has spoken, you have the leader of opposition speaking, and leader of opposition will do enough of damage to your case. So as a deputy prime minister, you're supposed to, like, fill in the gaps, like clarify certain things that have been crushed by the leader of opposition, and you try to refute the case of opposition's team, and then you try to re-establish your stance, as well as you put forward to argument. Okay, and then as a whip, you cannot make any new arguments. Remember, as a whip, your role is to look at the ideas presented by the other side of the members, and then try to find the points of clash. Okay, you're supposed to rebut as well as analyze and look at the flaws, and then come out and prove and tell at the end of the flaw why your team is still doing a better job and why your team's motion should stand. Okay, so on the side of opposition, all right, so leader of opposition, as a debater myself, I always loved being in the opposition team, because most of the time your job only starts right after the debate begins, because we do not know what's the concept the government is trying to propose, isn't it? So usually the debate would start, right in the middle. All right, so I mean, the idea will usually emerge when the prime minister is talking, and somehow rather you would be able to come up with your flow. So but leader of opposition, some of the things you need to identify is that you need to understand the motion itself, right? So try to always have a parallel debate. Okay, so don't go in two ways. All right, you do not try to challenge the motion. So when you challenge the motion, the debate will be going on two different directions, and there's no engagement in the debate. So always try to agree, unless the definition provided by the government is completely hopeless. So then you can probably redefine the motion. So try to look at some of the ideas presented by the government, and then rebut that, and then you try to produce one argument itself. So deputy leader of opposition, the same thing. You're supposed to refute the case presented by the deputy prime minister, and then re-establish the case on the opposition side and advance an argument itself. So remember, opposition is not like you're supposed to negate the motion all the while. No, opposition you're supposed to negate, but you can also come up with a proposition. For example, you are telling that we don't feel capital punishment should be abolished, because it's going to create an irrelevance cycle, probably, or it doesn't do a justice, all right, to the crime done. Or we believe that if you're going to abolish that penalty, then it would create an unbalanced deterrence measure. So you have to come up with a positive solution as well. It's not just negating and saying no, what the government is doing is bad, it's not going to fit in the scenario, and so on. But you also try to propose something that is rational. Okay, all right. So a debate is usually, all right, all this while I've been measuring you with the amount of matter, manner, and method. All right. So what is matter? Matter is the most important or crux of the debate usually. That means, what are you contributing to the debate? What are the ideas? Are you providing ample of logical reasoning? Are you providing ample of explanation? And is your analogy that you're presenting fit into the context, right? So that is matter. Manner would be the way how you deliver, all right, how persuasive are you as a speaker, and at the same time, are you adhering to the conduct of debaters? We have seen some debaters, right? They are so bossy and arrogant. They throw abusive words, during the speeches, and they think that that is cool. No, it's not cool. All of this matter is usually taken into account by the adjudicators, right? So we want to be humble, and at the same time, we want to emphasize some of the elements that we're really throwing in. You have to show yourself as a passionate debater at the end of the day. Okay, all right, then would be the method. All right, the method is the way how you respond to the debate itself, right? So in terms of how, whether are you following the rules, or are you following the order of debate, all right, and at the same time, are you presenting POIs, are you taking in POIs, and so on. Yeah, all right. Okay, next. So as a prime minister, hold on, just give me a second. Sorry. Okay. So, being the prime minister, all right, it is very important for you to define the context. Like I said, right? Some motions are principle level motion, so you don't have to define the context. It's obviously understood. But some motions are policy debates. So when it comes to a policy debate, so when you want to introduce, when you're going to introduce some mechanism, all right, some strategies and approaches. So in that matter, you need to define the context and parameters of the debate. All right. For example, this house would support musicians, right? So you can actually look at this motion, all right, whether it should be a commodity trade or it should be available options itself, right? So how do you actually look at the motion is very important as a team, and then try to provide a little bit of background and history, especially if it's a policy debate. Okay, you need to understand why are you implementing this. Okay, and then you have to make sure that you have your stance, all right, and then you produce your argument. Okay, so the deputy prime minister, you have to rebut the first argument coming from the leader of opposition and point out the flaw in their case, and then you try to rebut the rebuttals done to the prime minister's case as well. That means you try to defend the idea of prime minister, but don't do so much. Just spend about 1 to 2 minutes, or maximum would be 3 minutes, and then you go into your argument. All right. So you're supposed to produce an argument, okay, explanation, okay, and then a little bit of example as well. All right. Okay. 1 second. I'm so sorry. Okay, so speaking of a whip, all right. So the whip's role is similar if you are in the government or opposition team. Your job is to rebut, okay, the ideas presented by the other side. Let's say you're the government whip. You're supposed to rebut the ideas presented by the leader of op, the deputy leader of op, and then you're supposed to defend a little bit in terms of what your team has done and then provide a deeper level of analysis. So this is where I always tell my students to be a whip. You are actually playing the devil's advocate role. Why? You have to put on the glasses, all right, to look at ideas presented by both sides, all right, and then you need to find the clash. Okay, is it the concept of rights is discussed? Is it the concept of finance? And then you try to compartmentalize and analyze and look at this issue. And at the end of your discussion, you have to come up and say why your team's idea stands better than the other team's idea. Okay, all right. So, leader of opposition, you can either agree or disagree to the context, and at the same time, you have to, of course, rebut, what the government team has presented, isn't it? So, try not to do any definition challenge, but if you have no other choice and you have to do it, then you go ahead. Okay. All right. So the accusation of squirreling and all comes, if the government team did not set up a proper case. Okay. And you're supposed to rebut the prime minister's argument, give a little bit of framework. What is the opposition trying to do at the end of the day? And then provide a solution, right? So this is what I meant. You come up and provide with an alternative, right? So example, the house will legalize abortion. So as the opposition team, you don't want to legalize abortion because you're proposing for adoption, maybe, right? So you're supposed to come up with a solution that would actually tackle the problem of the government, but you don't want to agree to their solution because there are some problems with their solution. Understand? So that is what the opposition does. Okay, and then you come up with one idea, and then you have to affirm and say that you don't agree with the motion itself. Yeah. So deputy leader of opposition, you have to rebut the ideas presented by the prime minister as well as deputy prime minister on the government side. You have to defend the damages done to the leader of opposition's team, idea, and then you produce two arguments and then reassert your stand. So opposition whip again. You have to rebut the ideas presented by the government team, okay, and then you provide rebuttals to make sure that their ideas are much more problematic than what you're trying to resolve at the end of the day. Okay, and then provide a deeper analysis by looking at the points of clash and no new arguments. As a whip, you cannot bring in any new arguments, but Um, but you should actually you can actually extend the arguments presented by your team. All right, you just want to extend, right? Maybe in terms of examples or analogies, you can do that, but you cannot come up with new arguments. Okay, you're supposed to reason the opposition stand and case. Okay, so that's how the role of the speaker, right? So you have the prime minister, and then the leader of opposition, deputy prime minister, deputy leader of opposition, the whip of the government, and then the whip of the opposition. So in between, all right, from the first to 7 minutes for each speakers, you will actually need to come up with POI, points of information. So what's a points of information? What is points of information? So those are ideas that is usually given in less than about 30 seconds. You can ask a question that really matters, but you don't ask POIs like, can you repeat that? No, we don't do that. For example, on the idea of this, all right, what do you think? All right, that kind of question that is actually important for the discussion. So when are POIs offered? POIs are offered from the first to sixth minute only. Okay, so let's say the prime minister is talking. Anyone from the opposition team can actually ask a POI. The same thing. Okay, let's say the deputy leader of opposition is talking. Anyone from the government team can actually offer a POI. So once this is done, that would be end of debate for our class. But in the real context of a debate, you usually have a reply speech. A reply speech is like a summary of debate. It would be the last final token presented to the adjudicators to make sure that they're able to decide on winning side. All right. But for our class, I'm just going to stop until once the whip of the opposition is done, and then that's it. But it's rather crucial, remember, for each of you to offer POIs. And as a speaker, let's say POI is offered to me, I can choose to take or not. But as a speaker, for you to fulfill your method, you need to accept one. Okay, at least one. All right. So, but then it's up to you when you want to accept. Let's say you are in the middle of, speech, and you really got to finish this up. So you can always, take it at the very end. You can say, can you just hold on to the thought for a second? Let me just finish this idea, and I'll get back to you. Or if you find that the speakers are really harassing you with too many POIs, you can just say, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to take in any more POIs at the point of time. Okay. All right. So that would be it for the class for today. So I want you to go through and understand the concept of speakers, all right? And then I'm going to release the motion, all right, for our Asian parliamentary style of debate that will take place onwards next week. So onwards next week, we'll be running through the assessment for Asian parliamentary style before we, end the term for the semester. Yeah, all right. So thank you very much. I'll see you in class.